All right, welcome to QuickBooks. This is chapter 1 where we're going to be introducing to you what QuickBooks is and what the platform is. So in this case, we're going to be looking at the complete 2021, okay? So this is what your book looks like, okay? So again, this book is going to have its own fictitious business where we're going to be taking a look at how to be able to run their business, right? So their business is called Imagine Photography. And what they have is they have pre-made files for you that it's already set up. And as we go through the book and read through the lessons and stuff, you're going to be opening the files and we're going to be properly doing whatever the lesson says. So if we're entering in a bill, we're entering in an expense. This is what this book is about, is going to be introducing the Imagine Photography type of business, okay? All right, so let's talk about QuickBooks product lines. So first things first is there are two different distinct product lines that we normally see that exist right now. So we have the QuickBooks Desktop and we have the QuickBooks Online. So again, you have the online version, you have the Pro, which is a desktop version, Premier, which is a desktop version. The Accountant could be online/desktop version, and we also have Enterprise. Now, all three of these, or four of these desktops, right, are actually going to be no longer in production. I believe the 2022 is the last of its series. So that means QuickBooks Desktop will cease to exist from here on out after 2022. So that means any product prior than that, of course, they're available because they already exist, but they're no longer going to produce any more desktops here on out. Okay? Because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be moving on towards the online platform, which is definitely more easable, more feasible, especially with nowadays, with today's society, right? We're living in a very, very technological kind of, platform, right? We're doing classes online. A lot of the things that we can do is also easily able to be done online, okay? Now, here are a few things that you need to know is that your Premiere and your Enterprise, these kind of programs, the desktop version, are special because they have industry specific reports, okay? What does an industry mean? Well, and at this green box right here, here are the 6 different industries that a typical business can fall under, right? You have a general business, right? You have general contractors, you have manufacturer business, you have nonprofit organizations, you even have professional or some kind of service, and you also have retail, which is the more common one that you would see. So if you fit in this criteria, right, by using the more advanced versions of QuickBooks, whether it's Premier or Enterprise, right, you are able to make reports that are more geared toward a specific industry. So let's say I'm in the production of making equipment, right? So any other business that are also in that same industry, it will tailor my reports and make my reports more geared towards that kind of type of industry, right? They'll make more reports that are more used for manufacturing things like that. So again, raw materials, right? That's going to be an example of something that's in a manufacturing versus a retail. You wouldn't have raw materials under a retail type of business, right? So of course, if you actually visit the website itself, there's actually way more than Pro, Premier, and Enterprise. There's things such as, for example, there's the 2021 version of Self-Employed, right? There's even Live, where you're recording the transactions right then and there. There's things like advanced advanced commerce, payroll. So we'll talk about payroll. There is a section for specifically if you're trying to outsource your payroll, right? They actually have a program for just strictly payroll, and so on and so forth. So again, you get a lot of more information if you visit the Intuit website or QuickBooks.com. Either way, they will lead you to the same website, okay? So those are the two different, clear product lines that you see as an online version and a desktop version. But these are the ones that are available as of right now for the QuickBooks 2021. Okay. So again, what's the difference between the online version versus the desktop version? Straightforward. The easiest one is that for a desktop, it is most likely to be on a local computer, okay? A local computer, drive, laptop, whatever it is, right? It's on a device, and you must log on using internet via Wi-Fi at home or at an office, usually, okay? So these ones, they don't travel as easily as you would with an online version, right? Because the online version, right, when you're using the desktop version, everything is going to be on a file. It's going to be on the local computer drive. It's not easily accessible from computer to computer to computer, right? You would have to either email it to someone else or so on and so forth, right? Where the online version is a cloud-based service, where if you're familiar with the cloud, right? Microsoft has its own cloud space. Apple has its own cloud space. So Intuit also has their own cloud space for QuickBooks, okay? And that's exactly what the online version is for the QuickBooks Online, is that you're able to access your file anywhere in the world as long as you have the application, the device, and internet access. So again, you're able to travel anywhere you want to go without having to lug a laptop or having to lug a computer, right? And be able to access the file virtually anywhere, because it's using an online cloud-based service. So that means all of your reports, all of your records are all going to be saved in the cloud versus saved on a desktop or a computer. Okay? And again, it allows more freedom to, once again, to do the job on the go. So that's the clear difference between desktop versus online. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the different online options you have. So here, it really depends on what your kind of business is. Are you a simple, small business? Then you wouldn't necessarily need to do as many transactions, except for keeping the basics: how much money you generated, how much money you spent to operate your business, and that's about it, right? And each package, as you go up in each one, also includes the more tasks and as well as more cloud space. So again, subscriptions, here's the thing about a subscription. It's not a yearly plan, it's a per month subscriptions. That means you have to make a payment every single month to be able to have access to QuickBooks Online. It's a subscription. Okay. So make sure you do know that. But every single one that you look into, so again, depending on how size of your company, right, and what transactions and things that you want to have the capabilities to do. So again, if you move up to essentials, right, you're able to manage your growing business by automating billing features. So again, you can pay your bills. You can also enter in your bills here, where the first one you only enter in your income and your expenses. Then the plus one increases, saying that you can manage that and projects, as well as also handle inventory. And then of course, as you progress to the most largest one, which is the advanced one, you're going to get more features such as being able to do reporting, and so on and so forth. So again, you have a lot more activities. Now again, these are just brief overviews. Of course, you would need to know, you would have to seek some kind of professional sales representative to pick the type of service which best fits you. So again, especially if you don't really know what you're looking for, you want to start off with the basic, and then you want to kind of go up in and upgrade your online services as more that you find that you need more items to do. But again, each one is just going to increase in more tasks that you can do virtually anywhere, and also the more cloud space you need to be able to record those transactions. Okay. So let's talk about the desktop version. So here, the most popular desktop versions is going to be your Pro, Premier, and your Enterprise. Okay? So what's the difference between these three? Okay, so Pro. Okay? Pro is for small businesses, okay? Where it only needs to hold up only 14,500 items, okay? What does that mean? So every time you enter in a person or or let's say a product that you sell, that's considered one item. So in this case, if you want to have 14,000 customers, that's your maximum that you're able to have on a Pro account, okay? Now, we're looking at a business, right? A business can have anywhere from, starting point, like could have one customer, or it could have thousands of customers. So that's essentially why a Pro is more beneficial for smaller business, because you won't really need that much space to be able to enter in. 14,500 should be plenty enough. And you can have about 1 to 3 users have access to that to the same file at the same time. Okay. So this is meant for, let's say you have your accountant and you have your HR. They can be able to use the file simultaneously. All right, in a small business. All right, so that's Pro. Now, Premier, you're going to have a little more than that. So in this case, right, it's for small to medium-sized kind of businesses, or LLCs, which usually can hold up to 1 million items per list. So that means you can hold up to about 1 million customers, 1 million vendors, 1 million employees, right? That's for small to medium-sized businesses, okay? Where, again, you are also able to have 3 to 5 people to be able to access the file at one time. So you can have one for sales, one for inventory, and one for HR. They can use the file simultaneously, okay? And we'll talk about multi-user mode using. So in this case, when you have access to one file, right, you can have multiple people enter in things at the same time, okay? And it has over 150 plus industry specific reports. So if you remember what we talked about, right? Since for a medium to small kind of business, right, you're definitely going to categorize yourself in one of those industries. Do you sell a good or service? Do you provide a service, or do you create the product, right? So when you have those specific industries, it allows you to make a lot more detailed reports within more depth, organization, or in more depth research in your reports, okay? And then you have forecasting as well as mobile tracking. So I don't know if you've seen this before, but if you ever come across those commercials that you see where they're trying to have you guys all download the QuickBooks application. So this is what mobile tracking does. It allows you to access your file, right? But not online. It allows you to take a picture, so then when you come back to the office, you are able to download it into your desktop immediately. Okay, so that's what the mobile feature there is. It's not for you to access your account online because that's the online version. This one allows you to make it easier so when you do go on the go, all you have to do is take a picture of the receipt, and when you come back to the desk, to your office, you're able to upload it right away. Okay, so that's what mobile tracking does. Okay, and this is for medium to small types of businesses. Okay. Now, enterprise is for those big, huge corporations where they have billions, millions, trillions of people in their company, right? They have billions of customers, they have billions of vendors, they have millions of employees, right? So again, it's for a bigger type of business. And because of the amount of employees that they can have, that means they can allow up to 30 people to use and access the file at one time. Okay? And we'll talk about multi-user modes in a couple slides from here. Okay? All right? So being the capabilities of using the file at the same time. So then you can have one for sales, profits, someone for in charge of the team's manager, I don't know, advertising, right? You have a lot of different chairs that you can allow to have access to, okay? And again, you have the same 150 plus advanced reportings because again, you're corporate, right? Corporations have a different type of standard formatting. So they can go into way more details, especially with the advanced reports. Okay, they have the capabilities of doing forecasting as well as mobile tracking. Okay, so once again, when you are choosing which product will suit best for you, it really depends. Well, what kind of business are you? If you're a small business, a sole proprietor partnership, or something that's really small, Pro should be enough for you. Okay. But if you're a little bit bigger than if you're still a sole proprietor, but you're a little bit bigger, maybe almost up to LLC status, then you should maybe upgrade to Premiere. But for us, for this class, in this book, we're going to be teaching you how to use the desktop Premiere. So the 2021 version allows you to have access to the Premiere desktop version. Okay? So that means we're looking into a small / medium-sized company, okay, that doesn't have that many employees or customers or vendors, but yes, but they have enough. All right? So that's that there. Then we're going to talk about what's the difference between that and the desktop accountant's version. The desktop accountant's version, so, okay, this is for tax purposes only, okay? Especially when you go and seek a tax professional, this is how they make it as much easily and accessible for any business for them to be able to send them an accountant's copy. Because if they sent them an accountant's copy, what they're essentially doing is they're allowing their accountant to have access to their company file without making any minor adjustments. So in this case, what accountant does is it's a blend between the Pro, Premiere, and Enterprise. That means you can convert it. You can toggle between the 3 different desktops. So in this case, the accountant is the most powerful program because you're able to do all three forms of the QuickBooks. However, here's one thing that you're not able to do. You are not able to access or be able to download the accountant's version is because you guys are not tax accountants. Okay, so this is strictly for anybody who works for either the IRS or for some kind of taxation firm. They are allowed to have access to this because it allows them to, again, be able to look at other people's profiles and company files without having them all to have to be the same one. They can just easily create a accountant's copy, and then the accountant, when they're done, they can simply just go ahead and convert it back to the original program that the company had, right? So if the company had Pro, then they'll convert it to a Pro file. If it's a Premiere file, then they'll move it to a Premiere file. Okay? Okay, any questions so far? No questions? Okay. So let's talk about what a release number is, okay? A release number essentially gives you pretty much an overview of the file that you're currently using, as well as the product information. So if you look at this one, here's an example here where it's a screenshot where if you press F2, which is the magic key that you're going to be looking at, that is the function 2 key. It's on your keyboard. It's above the numbers, okay? It's the function 2 key. When you hit that button, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get the program that you're using. So in this case, this example here is just an example. It tells you that you're using the QuickBooks Desktop Pro 2019. Okay, release number 1P, and there's no number after that. And then it says right here, activated R1-22. What does that mean? Okay, in this case, right, what does the R mean? The R means the release. What is a release? So every time a program comes out, right, it's never going to be perfect. That program is always going to be consistent, is always going to be constantly changing, having updates, having errors or glitches, right? We can call them glitches in the program, right? And what a release does is it temporarily fixes that problem. So how do these releases come about? Well, when you have QuickBooks, right, what happens is that a few people who are avid users of QuickBooks, right, they test the program out, and their job is to find any bugs or any problems that occur when using QuickBooks, right? And then they have a dashboard or a blackboard where they post on there, and then QuickBooks acts on it and tries to find some kind of way to make a patch for it or do a temporary fix. So every time you update your QuickBooks, right, what you're doing is you're downloading that patch to be able to fix the problem. So right now, in this case, this example here, R1-22, that means you're currently on the first release out of 22 that are available. Okay? Is it obligated for you to update your QuickBooks? You can. Is it a requirement? No. You'll be fine unless you have an issue where you're trying to enter in, let's say, a bill and there's a glitch in there. Then yes, you might gonna have to want to update your QuickBooks, right? Just to again, download the patches. Okay, you're not upgrading the program, you're just updating. Okay, so make sure you know the difference between upgrade and update. Updating is where you're just getting the latest software or the latest fixtures to the program. Okay. Here you also list your license number. So for any reason that you do contact QuickBooks for help, this is where you're able to find your license number and your product number, okay? These are important because they will ask you, so they can be able to log into this exact program and be able to help you and fix your problem, Okay, and it even tells you the date of when you downloaded it. So in this case, we installed the Desktop to Pro 2019 since September 19 of 2019. Okay. Now, when you're currently on a actual particular file, it's also going to tell you how many lists you have in the file, how big is the file, what is the current weight of the file, the size of the file, how much information is in the file. Okay, so again, this is going to give you a lot of information pertaining the product that you're using, but also pertaining in what the current file that you have currently open, what is its detail, what does it hold. Okay, all right, and again, that's what our release number is. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about accounting 101. Okay, so we talked about the program, what are the products, right? So let's talk about what is a key feature that you should kind of have a small background in, right? A little bit of accounting 101, okay? Now, as I mentioned this in the very beginning of class, right? QuickBooks is not an accounting software. It's used as an accounting software, but the primary goal is to use it as a tax software, right? To make it that much more easier to file taxes. So anybody can be able to use QuickBooks. You don't need to be an accountant to use QuickBooks. You don't need to be a tax professional to be using QuickBooks, right? You don't even need to have any background knowledge because especially if you work for a company, they're going to be teaching you how to use the QuickBooks for their company. So again, by you knowing the background information, that only allows you to be able to manipulate QuickBooks the way you want it to be. So here's a few things that you were expected to know as part of the accounting background for the QuickBooks sake, okay? So again, understanding the flow of a transaction. So especially when you make a sale, right? So how do you see the cash flowing into the company and how is it flowing out from the company, okay? So again, for example, if you sold something, right? If you made a sale, then you increased your income, you generated income, but you had to get paid for it. So in this case, you are increasing money, but you're also saying that you earned your sale. You sold a product. Okay, so again, it's very tricky if you're coming into it or not really understanding anything about a business, but it's pretty straightforward, right? You made a sale. That means you received cash. You sold a product. That's all you need to understand. Okay. Other things that you need to understand is going to be the 5 accounting types. There are 5 accounting types, no more, no less, okay? And what these are is your assets, your liabilities, your equity, your income, also known as revenue. In QuickBooks, it's known as income, and your expenses, okay? Assets are going to be everything that you own in the company. So if you own a bank account, right, with all the money from your business, you own that. If you buy inventory, you own that inventory until you sell it. If you have a machine, you bought it, you own it. You have a patent, right, your license to say that's yours, then that's going to be something that is going to be considered an asset. Okay? Liabilities is going to be everything that you owe. OWE. So meaning, let's say you buy something and you put it on an account, a store credit card account, right? That's a liability, right? That means you owe this person money. A loan will be considered a liability as well, right? Because you owe the bank money. Because you borrowed money, okay? Equity is going to be considered the net worth of your company, all right? Now, do not confuse equity between accounting equity versus versus real versus equity that you consider for housing, okay? That is a different type of equity, right? That is generated money that you earned, right? That's considered equity for realtors, okay? Or for that kind of industry. No, property management, that's a completely different type of equity. The equity that we understand here in accounting is going to be what is the original investment? What is the net worth of the company? That is what this equity means. Okay? How do you increase it? You increase it by adding more investments to your company. Or if you take away money from your company, then you're going to decrease. Adding your profits. Okay? Where, property management equity is completely different because you buy a house and you wait 20 years later, it generates equity out of thin air. No, that's not what this means, okay? It's a completely different, but they do use the same word, okay? Income is going to be anything that you sell, in particular, whether it's a product or service, it's your means of generating income. And your expenses are going to be any costs it takes you that you have to incur in order for you to operate your business. So a great example will be rent expense, right? You need to pay for rent to have a building, to have your store open for you to generate your money, okay? And the fundamental accounting equation here that you're going to have to memorize, okay? This one is something that you have to know because it's the backbone of any type of business, okay, is understanding this. Everything that you own is going to be equal to everything that you owe plus the value of your company, okay? A lot of people also see this as what the net worth of your company is going to be equal to your everything that you owe minus everything that are own minus everything that you owe. But in this case, this is the actual accounting equation because this is where when we test the accounting equation by running our financial statement, which is the balance sheet, which we'll talk about, is that having the assets equal your liabilities plus your equity. So everything that you own should equal everything that you owe plus your equity. Okay, that's the fundamental accounting equation, backbone to all businesses. Okay. Second thing that you're going to be needing to know here is going to, or I guess third thing, is going to be the chart of accounts. You need to build a chart of accounts in order for you to even start the process of recording your transactions, okay? Why? In this case, because when we learn the idea of how accounting works, accounting is understanding how the flow of a transaction works, right? But in order to understand how a transaction works, we need to categorize them. We need to organize them in specific accounts. So as I mentioned before, right, if you own your bank account, your checking account, that is your money. So therefore, when you have sales and you receive money from it, that's cash that you own. So that's going to be considered an asset that you need to record. So in this case, that's the whole purpose of this is you're going to create a list of accounts. This helps you organize a business transaction and it allows you to transfer from one account to another, right? If I have $5,000 in my checking account and I need to pay for rent for $500, then that's straightforward, right? I need to spend money from my checking account and I'm going to pay for my rent expense, okay? So in that case, those are the accounts that I'm using, okay? So again, A business transaction is going to involve you to have to analyze the transaction and organize them in a meaningful way. And how do we organize it? By categorizing them based on account type. Is it an asset? Is it a liability? Is it an equity? Is it income, or is it an expense? Right? And they're in order. So in this case, you need to know this, especially for chapter 12. The chart of accounts is going to be standard in order based on account type. Okay, so that means your assets are going to come first, your liability is going to come right after, then your equity, then your income, and then last but not least is going to be your expenses. Okay, it has to be in the exact order. Okay, and you'll understand why in chapter 12. Okay, so then we are going to also see now, how do I organize those ideas and categorize them in a meaningful way? In this case, we're going to be using what's called the debit and credit system, which is also known as the double entry accounting system, okay? Where the rule number 1 is, if you have a debit, you need to have an equal and opposite credit, okay? So this is where applied science is also going to work here too, right? If you have an action, you should have an equal and opposite reaction. So same thing here. So if I had a sale, right? So that means I earned income. So therefore, I'm going to increase it. And let's say I got it for $25. But I also have to include sales tax, which is separate, because this is not money that you generated. This is money that you collect on behalf of the government, right? And that total credit is going to equal a total cash of $27.06. So therefore, the rule number 1 is going to be your total debits equal your total credits. And this is how we take a business transaction and we organize it in a meaningful way. So if I sold something for $25, then I should have an equal and opposite reaction, which in this case, how did I sell it? Did I receive money? In this case, yes, you did. Okay? So that's the rule there. So in this case, we need to understand the rules of how an account increases and how an account decreases, right? So this is where this is also connected to the accounting model, okay? The accounting model helps you also, again, understand how a business transaction flows, okay? So I'll give you the second example, right? Let's say I paid rent, okay? I paid rent by using the money in my checking account. Rent is going to be considered an expense because I had to spend money in order to buy rent so then I can open up my shop. Now, in this case, right, how do I increase an expense? In this case, I would increase an expense by debiting the account, okay? And let's say my rent was $15,000. Then therefore, I'm going to debit my account for $15,000. But because I have to use the rules of my total debits equaling my total credits, how did I pay for that rent? I paid by using my checking account, right? My checking account is something I own, which is going to be an asset. Now, did I increase my money or did I decrease my money? In this case, I decreased my money. I spent money, right? So therefore, I would have my equal and opposite credit for $15,000. And that's how we use the accounting model to understand how the flow of a business works. And here, this is how we record it in our books to show us, where does my money go? Okay, in this case, I earned money, right? In the second example I gave you, I spent the money. So that's the purpose of how we understand how a business transaction flows and how it affects the business, right, is by constantly keeping track of where your money is going, right? Am I earning the money or am I spending the money? Okay. And then the last section here is to understand the difference between a cash basis versus an accrual basis. Okay. Cash basis, right? In this case, it's pretty straightforward to understand, right? Any kind of mom and pop shop, right? When they usually start off their business, they would typically start off with a cash basis, meaning if they earn the money and it's by cash, they will record that they received the income. And they will only spend the money if they have the cash readily available in their hands to spend. Okay? So that's cash basis, where you only record income when cash is received. So if you sold something, cash is in your hands. If you spent something, cash leaves your hands. Okay? And then that's cash basis. Whereas the accrual basis allows you to think a little differently. It allows you to earn your income whether or not you received cash. So again, if I did receive cash, great, I will record that I earned income. But if I had somebody say, hey, how about I owe you on an account? I give you an IOU. I will pay you back later. You still sold that product to them. So therefore, you're still going to record the income even though whether you received the money or not. That's the accrual version. So you can think about invisible money flowing around. And that's how we understand accrual basis, right? In most companies, we tend to use the accrual basis more than the cash basis, because under the accrual basis, right, we're always assuming, right? We're going to record no matter whether we received money or not. Okay? Same thing with expenses. We will record something has happened whether we paid or not. So oftentimes when you have somebody come out to fix, I don't know, let's say a plumbing expense, right? You had a plumber come fix your faucet, right? They don't expect you to pay them right now. In fact, they will bill you. So, but they'll say, well, the job is done. However, did you pay them? No. In fact, you owe them money. So in this case, that's the idea here, where you're recording the expense had already happened, whether or not you paid. Okay? And it happened the day that it's been completed. Right? So that's how we understand the accrual basis, is that you're going to record when it happens, regardless whether you received money or not, or paid or not. Where cash basis, you're limited to only counting for what you have currently in your hands. Okay? There's no such thing as an IOU for this section for cash basis. Okay? And for QuickBooks, right, it will be defaulted by automatically, it's going to automatically start your QuickBooks as an accrual basis type of accounting. Okay? So it's going to automatically assume that you're going to automatically collect the money regardless, collect the sales regardless whether you got paid or not. Okay? Automatic. You do need to toggle this, which I do show you in chapter 7. Okay? And then last but not least, we talked about how we utilize QuickBooks, right? In this case, when we think about how to use QuickBooks, we're going to be using QuickBooks as if it is a single entry system, okay? We just talked about double entry, right? Where if I have an action, I have an equal and opposite reaction. But as a user and we're entering the information in, we're entering it only as a one-sided entity. So in this case, I say I record a bill, I owe money. That's all I'm recording. Okay? I'm only recording one side of the picture. Now, how do I record into QuickBooks and enter in the transactions? by entering invoices, entering bills, entering memos, entering checks. Okay? But, however, because this is supposed to make it that much more easier for you to understand the flow of transactions, you're not the one that's figuring out how the transaction works. All you're figuring out is how to enter it in, because QuickBooks will run and do the accounting in the background for you automatically without you having to figure out where the debits and credits go. So that's the cool thing about that. Now, for those who are taking my accounting class, you will get to see the experience on how to understand how to properly journalize a transaction, but we're also going to be doing a fictitious business, which allows us to manually enter in our books using the debit and credit system, okay, and do manual bookkeeping. And then we're going to compare and contrast and see how different it is when you go into QuickBooks, where you don't even need to focus about the debits and credits. All you need to focus is, what is the transaction at hand? Do you owe money? Are you billing your customers? Are you writing out a check to somebody? Are you receiving a check from somebody? That's how you need to understand here. And that's why you don't need to have an accounting background. You don't need to be having an accounting degree to use QuickBooks. It's for anybody and everybody. Okay? However, if you do have the accounting background, that only makes it that much more easier for you to understand. And if there's a mistake in there, you can manipulate QuickBooks to make it perform the functions that you want it to do, not what QuickBooks is going to tell you to do. So you have more flexibility, more control over QuickBooks if you're someone who doesn't have the accounting experience. Okay? Any questions?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about cash basis, you purely talking about only using cashies?
Mm-hmm.
Because I know, for example, grocery store Winkos,
Mm-hmm.
they don't take any kind of a credit card. They only allow customers to use cash or the debit card.
Perfect. That's a perfect example of a cash basis. Yes.
Okay, so even though debit card is card.
Yes, but a debit card is like transferring money from you. It's actually money that you have. It's your own money.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Don't confuse that with a
Oh,
credit card. Because a credit card it's not your money.
no. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
debit card transaction can be considered as cash for this
Correct.
transaction.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Right. All right. So, any other questions? Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about QuickBooks files. So, as we go through QuickBooks, right, you're going to see 3 different types of files. Now, with these 3 different files, there's really only one, okay? Because the other 2 are just simple copies of the same file, okay? Now let me elaborate. So, the overall ending at this point is you want to get to a working data file, okay? QBW for short. Working data file allows you to create your company file, and what you're doing is this is the part where you're adding information into the working data file. You're constantly updating it. Every time you receive a bill, you enter in a bill. Every time you sold something, so on and so forth, right? You're constantly updating the working data file. Okay? Now, let's say I want to make a backup. A backup is just going to make a copy of the working data file, because what a backup does is it allows you to have a safeguard to all the work that you put into this QuickBooks file. Now, here's a cool thing about how QuickBooks works is, because when you're using QuickBooks and you're using the current working data file, you don't need to manually save it all the time. It will automatically do it for you by using the Intuit Cloud. Yes, that's why it's important that every time you open up your file, you have a specific license and a specific register number for a reason. They give you like a small cloud space, so it saves the work for you automatically. Okay? Now, for any reason that, let's say, you have multiple people working on this file at the same time, and because you need to have internet at all times, wherever you go, that's where it gets you, is that if you don't have any internet access, unfortunately, you're not able to enter in any information in there, or let's say your internet drops, you have a possibility of corrupting your program while you're entering it in. So what a backup file does is it saves a copy of this working data file, and you can either place it on a portable file somewhere on the desktop. Usually that's an okay place that you could do it too, or you can save it on another desktop. Okay, on a an external hard drive. Okay, another flash drive, right? This will only save the work, all right? So let's say I saved a backup copy, right? And I'm working on my data file, and all of a sudden, boom, my internet shuts down on me, and I'm in the middle of entering a transaction, but I haven't saved anything since then, and whenever time I open it, it won't open anymore because it's now corrupted. Then I can go ahead and use my backup file. I can open my backup file, which when you do that, what happens is it creates another brand new working data file. And it has all the contents that you saved up to the point, but it won't save what you were working on earlier. It only saves what you intended it to save. So let's say I'm in the middle of my transaction for yesterday's date, right? So let's say I finished my transactions for April 30th. I saved a copy, right? And right now, today's May 2nd, and my file becomes corrupted. That means my working data file can only restore up to April 30th. Okay? So that's the huge thing here, is what the difference of a backup copy is. It's just a copy of the data file. That's it. You cannot work on a backup file. Okay, and if you want to save another copy of your working data file, you have to create a new backup file with the new content in it. So in this case, all the backup file is just a copy of the working data file. So that's why at the end of the day, even if you open up your backup file, it's just going to create a new working data file. Okay, so at the end of the day, the only one that you're really focusing on is the working data file. Okay. The backup file is just a copy. The portable file is also a copy. Okay? What does the portable file do if it's just a copy of the working data file? It shrinks and compresses the file to make it small enough so you're able to email it to other coworkers, people, whatever it is that you need to do. Okay? Email it to yourself. That's what a portable working data file does. It just makes a copy of the working data file, and it saves it to a point, and it shrinks it so it's small. So when you open up the portable file, this is what happens when you open it. It creates a new working data file. It creates a copy of a new working data file. Okay? So at the end of the day, these two are just copies. Okay, the backup and the portable file are just copies, of the working data file. The one that you're constantly updating is the working data file. You cannot update the backup or the portable file. You can only save the working data file that you updated and create another backup or another portable file with those changes intact. Okay? So again, that's the huge difference between them. Now, a working data file, since it can hold 14,500 items per list, think about it. That means your file could be really heavy. It could be really, really big. And especially with your computer, if you only have 4 gigs of random access memory, it's going to take longer for you to open a file because of how much content that you put in there. So that's why when you're creating a backup, you're not really saving space. You're just creating the same copy of a working data file. A portable file is what's going to make you save a little space and time on your desktop. Okay? And again, yes. So here's also a fun fact about this too, is that when you're working on data files, it can go as far as up to 3 years prior. Okay? What does that mean? So if I currently have, let's say we saw the QuickBooks Pro 2019 file, right? You can open that in the 2021 version, right? Because that's up to 3 years prior, okay? Now, once you open that file up into the new 2021 program, you are unable to convert that and be able to open it in the 2019, okay? So you can only go forward, you can't go backwards, okay? And here's also another fun fact too, is that same thing that also goes with Program 2. If you have a Pro, you can access that in Premiere. However, if you have Pro, you cannot access Premiere. Make sense? So again, if you open up Premiere, you're able to access Pro files. Okay? But if you have Pro, you cannot access Premiere. Okay? So that also works between that too. That's why the accountant's version is the most easily one, because you're able to access all 3 of them whenever you'd like. Okay? So again, that's why also the powerful one here too is Enterprise, because Enterprise can open Pro and Premiere. Okay? But Pro cannot access Premiere or Enterprise because those have more tasks, more functions. It's not easily translatable, okay? So that's the fun fact there, is that's how you need to know when you're updating or upgrading your files, okay? And that's how it works, okay? Only up to 3 years. Any prior to that, so let's say I have a 2015 QuickBooks file, no. Unfortunately, you are not able to use it if you're using the 2021 because it's just so much difference between the 15 version and the 2020 version. It might not transfer everything over correctly. Okay? All right? Okay. So let's talk about how we actually open a file. Well, I'm going to go tomorrow in chapter 12, I do go over practicing how to open up a file on QuickBooks. But usually when you open up QuickBooks for the first time, you're going to be getting a gray screen and it's going to ask you this option, okay? How are you going to open up a company file? Are you going to open an existing one, or are you going to create a company file? You need to create a company file in order to access anything in QuickBooks, okay? It's not like Excel where you click a blank new page and you're able to access everything. No, you have to create a company file in order to utilize any of the functions that are in QuickBooks. If you don't create one, you can always open or restore a backup or a portable file. So in this case, right, this class is heavily reliant on opening portable files. Chapter 12, I'm going to show you how to create one so you're able to start using QuickBooks, okay? I'll even show you the difference on when you open up your QuickBooks files. You can't just go to the documents and double click on it. It will not allow you to do that. It will give you an error message, right? You actually have to open the program first, and you're going to have to actually select file, or you actually come down to this window and choose one of the two options. Either create a company file or open or restore a file, an existing company file, okay? And so here are the three options when you click on open or restore instead of create, right? Because chapter 12 is talking about creating. So you have the three options. You either open up an already existing data file, okay? You can open up a backup or a portable file, okay? And then these are the ways that we show you. Now, here's on how I'm able to save or create a backup file, right? And I will show you this on the very last lecture day on chapter 14. We will practice how to create a backup file, okay? In this case, you go to File and you're going to select Create or Backup Company, okay? And then same thing with a portable file, right? But this time, instead of doing a create a copy or back up the file, you're actually going to click on create a copy, and then it's going to give you the option. You want the accountant's copy or you want to create a portable copy, okay? So that's how you create your portable files, okay? Last section here, actually, no, wait, there's two more sections. User interface. How do we use QuickBooks? How do we use QuickBooks? Well, again, when you open up your company file, this is usually what you will see. You will see a bunch of windows pop up. You'll see this gray, or this blue little column here that appears on the left side of the screen. You'll see little lines and things like that, right? This is just the main screen when you open up QuickBooks for the first time, okay? Now I'm going to dissect each section so you know exactly what to do. The one that has all the little pictures with all the little lines and arrows, this is going to be called your home page. Your home page is going to be a graphic depiction of a flow of a transaction, okay? And it's based on a category, right? So in this case, for example, right, the top section, that's dealing with the vendors. Your vendors are people who are your suppliers, people you pay to do a job for you, your 1099 contractors, people that you contract to, do some plumbing for you, right? That's what a vendor is. So in this case, when you ask a vendor to do something for you, a common transaction is when they complete a job for you, they're going to send you a bill. Okay, so let's take a look at that bill and let's go through that gray arrow to the right. And the next thing they're going to do is if you enter in a bill, you need to pay the bill. Straightforward, okay? Another example is, well, let's go ahead and focus on the middle section now. The middle section is your customers, so people you sell a product to. So let's start here under create your invoice. So if you're selling a product to them and you're billing them, you're going to create an invoice. Follow that line across. Next is going to be receiving payments, right? You need to receive money. They owe you money. And follow that line out through too. It's going to go and be deposited here where you need to make your deposits, right? If a customer owes you money and they gave you money, how are you going to put it into the bank? You're going to deposit the money. So this is a graphic depiction of the flow of transactions, and it's broken up into 5 categories, right? Or, 5 sections. So first one from the top is your vendors, second is your customers, third is your employees, fourth is your company, so anything that has to do with your company, and then the last section, bottom, right corner is your banking section. This is where you can write a check, enter in a credit card transaction, deposit money. Okay? So that's the home page. And this is going to be the highly most likely navigated pages you will use throughout this entire class, right? It's the easiest way to access a lot of your transactions because all you have to do is just click on the icon. And when you click on the icon, you just look and follow the line across to see what's next. Okay? You don't really necessarily need to understand the flow of the transaction. It kind of shows you what it should be. Okay? That's the home page. The list that appears on the left side in a blue column like this, right, is going to be called your icon bar. Your icon bar is going to be a list of centers and registers, okay? What's a center? What's a register? We'll talk about that in a couple minutes, okay? But what these are is they're shortcut links, okay? They are not directly correlated to a transaction. You cannot enter in a bill using the icon bar, okay? But you can go to the vendor center, which allows you to be able to enter in a bill that way, okay? So we'll talk about what a center and what a register does. But that's what it does. It's just a list of shortcuts that take you to places to enter in your transactions. It's not the way to enter in the transaction itself, okay? And we call this the icon bar, okay? At the top of the screen here, right, we have this blue bar. That's your title bar, so you know exactly what file you're in. So in this case, this is an example of Academy Photography Intro Chapter 1. That's the title bar, okay? Underneath that, where you see File, you see Edit, View, List, that's called your menu bar. This is going to list out every single transaction you can think of and more. It will also list out all your registers and all of your centers, and these are basically it's your menu bar, right? It's where you can drop down the menu, scan through the items, and select what transactions you need to be done. So in this case, this is the menu bar. It's where you can access almost every and all the shortcuts, transactions, vendors, centers, registers, and so on and so forth. So any transaction you can think of, you're most likely going to be able to find it in the menu bar. Okay? And that's that right there. Okay? So let's talk about what a center does. Okay? A center basically gives you a little overview of a particular group, okay? So in this case, for centers, the common centers that you will see are your vendor centers, your customer centers, your employee centers. Other centers that you will see are going to be your bank feeds, your report center, and your inventory center, right? Things that are dealing with those kind of areas. But the more important ones are going to be the people group that are in your business. So again, your vendors are going to be the people that supply you, right? Maybe you purchase inventory from them. Now, when you go into the center, right, what does it do? It gives you a list of every single vendor that you have. It gives you their account balance that you have with them. And then on the right side, you could see that it gives you a really quick overview synopsis of their information, such as their contact information, right? Their email address, their phone number, okay? And then down below from that, the bottom right corner is going to give you the list of every single transaction that you have with this particular vendor. Okay, so this is a means of keeping track of the transaction itself, but categorized based on the person. Okay, so that's the vendor center, and this is where you can enter in any transaction that deals with a vendor. So if you're purchasing, your purchase orders come here. If you're received a bill, you can do it through here. If you're going to be paying off a bill, you can do that through the vendor center. As you can see at the top up here, you got the vendor list, and then right next to it says transactions. That's where you're going to be entering in all your transactions, okay? Where it says new transaction, okay? That's where you're going to be able to enter in those transactions, dealing with strictly vendors only, okay? For your customer centers, obviously, anything that has to do with sales is going to be done through the customer center. Okay? Entering transactions. So how do we enter in transactions? Well, there are a few ways that you can enter them. And here's a few examples, right? You can enter them through a form, okay? Have you ever been to the doctor's office, right? You fill out a form, they give you a piece of paper, and you got to fill in your name, your address, your information. Exactly the same idea, except obviously the form is going to be like this. It's going to have boxes for you to fill out yourself, and that's how you're going to fill it out, is by answering the questions, right? So for example, this is a purchase order. Who are you buying from? When are you buying it from? What number is this? What are the items are you going to buy? What are the quantity? How many items are you going to buy? How much is it going to cost you? Okay? And so on and so forth. So that's one way that you can enter in a transaction, is through a form. Okay? And we will see a lot of this starting chapter 4. Okay? List. Okay? So when you enter things in, you can enter them in like a list. Okay? So especially so then when you have multiple people in a particular list. So for example, this is my vendors list, right? I can enter them in either one at a time, or I can enter in 20 of them at a time, right? I can enter them in like a list. This one's straightforward, self-explanatory. Okay. I can also use registers. Now, registers, as you can see here, right, it's actually kind of difficult to understand how a register works. So if for those who were in my accounting class, the registers is the same thing as using your general ledger, okay? You enter in a transaction, so you're entering the date, you enter what that transaction is, and you're going to enter in the amount, and on the end of it is going to give you an account balance. So each account that is pertaining in this, so in this case, this is my checking account. This is the register for my checking account. This is where I can add money to this, I can subtract money, I can write checks, I can deposit checks, okay? This is where we're entering it in. We put in the amounts either as a debit or a credit, and it's going to give us our account balance at any given time, okay? So if you ever use like one of those checkbooks, right? At the checkbook, at the top of the checkbook, there's that little slip pocket thing where it gives you information to enter in the date, the check number, why you wrote this amount, to who you wrote it out to, and it gives you the amount that you put it in. That's the same thing. It's a means of you to keep your transactions in particular to that account. So in this case, this is my checking account. So every account is going to have a particular register. Now, you're also going to learn in tomorrow's lesson that only certain accounts have registers. Okay, your assets, liabilities, and your equity accounts are only going to be the ones that have registers. Income and expenses do not have registers. And I will elaborate and explain why they have registers in chapter 12. Okay? Items. So when we talk about in chapter 8, where we talk about making our items list, right? We can choose and pick our items in a list, right? To help us enter in our transactions. Now, in this particular one, items are strictly used for the sales process. So, if I'm selling a product, if I'm charging sales tax, if I'm giving a discount, if I am recording a payment, a down payment, or if I'm selling a product or service, that is what items are used for. So that means I can only use items on anything that has to do with a customer. So invoices, okay. You can use it on purchase orders too, because you can purchase your items too for you to sell the items. Okay, but in this case, items are only strictly used for the sales process only. And so when you put in each item in here, it comes out a drop out menu for you to go ahead and select. And that's how you can be able to enter in data. The more items you put on your items list, the much more easier it is to fill out a transaction. Okay? Any questions in regards to anything I talked about? No questions?
No.
No.
All right. So let's talk about QuickBooks Help. Okay. So whenever you come into a problem or an issue, you can always use QuickBooks Help to help you. Now, from my experience, I'm going to tell you this. They can be somewhat helpful, but sometimes they're not so much helpful, okay? It depending on what your situation is and what question you have. Now, when you use QuickBooks Help, there are a few things that you can see appear on the Help menu. So, for example, you're looking for the frequently asked questions. They have a manual that you can read through, okay? A digital manual that you can read through, and you can search your questions there. You can seek an actual professional. If you have issues with the actual program itself, you can ask for QuickBooks customer service help, okay? You can even ask the accountant. Now, that option is a paid subscription because you're asking professional advice. So it's not free. It is a subscription you do have to pay, but it's very helpful if, once again, you don't have anybody else that is an accountant or an accounting field and you need help with your business, you can utilize that as well, okay? Your help menu can also allow you to update. So again, we talked about releases. So if you need to update your QuickBooks program then to the latest release, you can do that as well. You can even choose to upgrade your QuickBooks. So if you're using Pro and I want to upgrade to Premier, you can do so as well. You do need to pay though, obviously, because you're upgrading from Pro to Premier, which is $100 difference, okay? And you can choose to downgrade as well, okay? So that's just a few options that you can utilize in the QuickBooks Help section, right? So let's go over the review questions, okay? So question number 1, okay? The fundamental accounting equation that governs all accounting is C. Assets equals liabilities plus equity. Excellent. Okay. Number 2. Which of the following statements is true?
C.
C.
Debits
C.
equal debits equal credits is correct. Okay? Now let's look at the other options and to figure out why those are not true. Okay? Debits are bad because they reduce income. Now in this case, debits, you don't have to always consider them as bad, right? In this case, that's opinionated. But let's actually take a look at it. Do debits actually increase or do debits decrease income? Yes, that is true. But what do they also increase? Okay, so you have to kind of look at that aspect too. Debits are not always bad because just because they decrease income, they increase cash. So is that a bad thing?
No.
No, it's not. Okay, so in this case, that one's kind of asked. It's a very opinionated answer, so that shouldn't even be an answer. Okay. B says equity is increased by a net loss. No, right? If you have a loss to your business, how in the world is that going to increase your equity? That's going to decrease your equity. So in this case, that already is false. Okay? And then assets are increased with a credit. No, that's not true. I just spoke that. You can use your accounting model to figure this out as well, that your assets are increased with a debit. Okay? Good. Number 3, under the accrual accounting,
B.
income and expenses are recognized when a transaction occurs. Yes. Yes. In this case, if they added whether you got paid or not, that would only validate it even more. But yes, income and expenses are recognized when the transaction happens, right? Whether you received money or not, right? So then other ones, so A, sales is not recorded until a customer pays. You already know that's cash. All expenses are not recognized until you write a check. Obviously, that means you have to have money available to pay. So it C's cash. And then D says you must maintain 2 separate accounting systems. No, you don't. It's not necessary. Okay. Number 4. Okay. QuickBooks is
All of the above.
okay. All the above is correct, right? It is a job costing system. We'll talk about job costing in chapter 9, okay? Which is where you get assigned a job. So whether you are responsible for buying certain items for particular customers, that will be considered a job costing, okay? Payroll system, yes, we will talk about payroll in chapter 10 and 11. And a double entry system, yes, QuickBooks is a double entry system, right? It does the debits and credits behind the scenes. But for users, we use it as a single entry. Okay? So that's a clear make sure you understand that's the difference here is that as us being users, we use QuickBooks like a single entry, right? We only enter in half the equation. QuickBooks does the double entry behind the scenes. Okay? Question number 5. What is not a method of accessing the data entry screen? Okay. D? Okay, yes. Okay. I did not talk about a data entry button. I talked about the home page, yes. I talked about the icon bar, yes, and I talked about the menu bar. So in this case, D. There's no such thing as a data entry button. If there was, QuickBooks would be 10 times more easier if you could just use the data entry button, right? Okay. And this is fill in the blank, so let's see if you guys can answer this as best as you can. Number 1, as you enter in data in a familiar looking blank, QuickBooks handles the blank entries for you. So familiar looking what? What kind of screen would be familiar? And what does QuickBooks do behind the scenes? What kind of the accounting entries? Good. So you got half of it. What about familiar looking what? Right? When you go to a doctor's office, what kind of familiar looking documentations are you filling out? Forms. Good. Okay. All right, you should blank your data file regularly because it is one of what?
Update.
Not update.
Backup.
Back up. Yes, because it is a safeguard to your work for your working data file. Good. Okay, I didn't read all of it, but it is for your own safety of your own data to protect it. Safeguard it by making a copy so you don't lose the information. Good. Okay, you can find that answer on page 14. Okay. Number 3, when you open your working data file, okay, QuickBooks displays the blank, okay, which is a screen, okay, which is broken up into 5 sections, okay, with each dealing with a separate function.
Homepage.
Homepage is correct, right? So remember, you got the vendor section, customer section, employees, company, and banking. Good. Question number 4. Okay, blank are used in QuickBooks for sales forms and represents what the company buys and sells. Items. Excellent. Yes, I mentioned this very briefly that items are strictly used for just the sales process. And you can use it to buy your items too or purchase your inventory. Okay. Last but not least, a list which shows all accounts in your working data file is called the blank. Not register.
Chart of accounts.
Chart of accounts, right? It's a list of all the accounts that shows you to basically organize your business transactions. Excellent. Okay. Any questions in regards to chapter 1?